Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to my patch 3.0a tier list. Before we get into it though, I'm going to talk about the sponsor for today's video. It's Raid Shadow, just kidding. It's wildstats.gg. So I'm really excited about this because wildstats.gg is a website that I use pretty frequently in order to build my tier lists, which is why I wanted to show it to you on this video, because it helps you understand how I gather some of my data. Not only does it have win rates and kind of like pick rates and also your own personal profile stats on wildstats.gg, but it also has individual champion stats, which helps you look at the best performing builds, the top builds, as well as the general win rate and pick rate of a certain champion. So for instance, I have chosen Baron lane or solo lane, 14 days in diamond tier. What I'd really love though, by the way, if you're listening to me, wildstats.gg devs, is if I could group like Emerald Plus and have all of the data from Emerald Plus, because the sample size of Master Plus isn't that huge, but the sample size from Diamond is pretty sizable. If I click Sett, it will bring me to a page with Sett, which has popular with, so it shows you champions that are played frequently with Sett. It shows you the average KDA of Sett players. It shows you the builds and the items that are very popular on Sett. And as you noticed recently, the Blade of the Ruined King Sterak's Gauge build or the Blade of the Ruined King Black Cleaver build has been really popular for Sett players. But also, this is the interesting part, it shows you the win rate. Guess when the patch came out where the Sett nerf came through? Isn't that really interesting? Now, the pick rate has also kind of corresponded to, but isn't that just very interesting that, you know, the win rate has dropped 4% according to wildstats.gg with that Sett nerf that came through, which has obviously hit him pretty hard. Still at a 52% win rate, so he's not a bad pick by any stretch of the imagination. But this is a great site to get all of your information for wildrift, and it allows you to research the champions in greater detail. I love it. Like I said, I use it for my tier lists. Master Yi in Diamond, 43% win rate. You can tell where he's going in my tier list today, boys. And speaking of the tier list, let's get into it. All right, starting off in the Baron lane. So, I still believe that Fiora and Renekton are like the best Baron laners in the game. Neither of them have really been touched in a few patches. They've both got pretty healthy matchups. Interestingly enough, Renekton's win rate isn't actually that good, according to Wild Stats, but I actually just think that he's very user intensive, and I also just think like good Renekton players and bad Renekton players, there's like a big gap between them. You have to really know your limits as Renekton, but I do truly believe that Renekton is still in a really healthy spot. Beyond that, I think people like, actually I'm going to move Sett up because I still think Sett's pretty decent, by the way. I think Garen, Darius, Gragas, I've always raved about Gragas because of how flexible he is. I still think Sett's decent. Even with the Jace nerf, I still think he's a solid pick. He just isn't as good like that level 1 all-in anymore. And his early game is a little weaker. However, he still scales really well, and I still think he's a solid late game pick. And I actually really like Pantheon. Pantheon's got, I'm actually going to see if I can show you. Let's go back to Wild Stats. Let's go back to Wild Stats. Here we go. We go to solo lane. You can see Jace is at a 51% win rate. If we find Pantheon's where is Pantheon? He's like the 7th most played. But actually, you click on him. Can we click on him? There we go. His win rate's actually gone up this patch. And I think Pantheon in general, I mean, his pick rate's dropped a little bit, but I think Pantheon in general is like a really solid pick that's very underrated, especially in Baron lane. So I really do like Pantheon. Right, let's go back to the tier list then, shall we, guys? Right. Malphite, I've moved Malphite down because whilst I still believe having a tank in your team is a really, really good thing, Malphite doesn't have the most agency in the game. And I think also if you're looking to get ahead in lane, Malphite is never a pick that you're going to pick and actually dominate lane with. And so I think that does impact how he feels as a pick. I think I've moved Camille down. I still think he's better than, she's better than Aurelia, but I've moved Camille down slightly. I think the nerf did hurt her. In A tier, we've got, these are just picks that I think are okay. Like, Lee Sin's very user intensive. Like, some Lee Sin players can make him feel really good, obviously, but I just don't think he's a solid Baron lane pick in general. Olaf is okay, Wukong's okay, Jarvan is good in the right situation, Jax is okay, Kennen still feels a little weak, but okay. These like considered like, you know, picking an A tier pick in my eyes is just like a good, you know, good solid choice. You can't go too far wrong with it. I would put caution on the Graves, the Lucian, and the Lee Sin. They're quite user intensive. Like you have to be a good player to really make use of them. I've moved Kale down. She's kind of in the dumpster now. Kale is a bit dumpstered after the last couple of patches, unfortunately. Her early game is too weak, and her late game isn't even that overpowered anymore. I just feel Kale's not in a great spot. Any other major... Nasus. What's really interesting to me, by the way, if I go back to wild stats again, I don't know if I can show you. Nasus is the 11th most played in Diamond with a 51% win rate, which baffles me because I have almost never lost to a Nasus. But hey, stats don't lie. I still think Nasus is trash, though. If you pick Nasus, you're farming for most of the game, and that's just not helpful for the team. Teemo as well. Teemo can absolutely sugar on Baron lane. He can really take over a Baron lane matchup, but compositionally, he adds basically nothing to a team. If anything, he just makes your composition worse overall. So even if he dominates lane, transitioning that into an actual advantage that wins you the game can often be a little hard unless you're just like ridiculously fed. Right, talk about jungle. That Lee Sin nerf, it meant nothing in my opinion. I still think Lee Sin is one of the most strongest champions in the game in the jungle, as is Kha'Zix. I've actually moved Jax up. Mainly, again, if I refer back to wild stats, if I go over to the jungle, you'll notice that Jax is the third most played jungler with a 51% or 50% win. Sorry, what am I talking about? 53% win rate in the jungle in Diamond, which is actually pretty sizable. And I think, you know, I can't ignore that. Jax is like a solid jungle choice as well. So I think Jax is up there as a jungler. I think Pantheon is. Evelyn's still a really great pick. One of the few good AP junglers in the game, along with Morgana, who's kind of crept in, although the Morgana nerfs, I think, did hurt her jungle more than anything else, especially her carry builds. So that's why I've moved Morgana down. Moved Nunu down just a little bit. I think he's outclassed by some of the picks above, especially in solo queue. Camille jungle's come down as well because that nerf definitely hurt her. Gragas jungle, I've moved up. I think Gragas, the buffs to Gragas have definitely helped him out in terms of his jungle clear. Jace jungle has gone down a lot. Sett jungle, I think Sett got a specific jungle nerf as well, so I've moved him down ever so slightly because his jungle clear speed got hit a little harder. Any other big changes? I don't think the Amumu changes really mean anything, if I'm honest with you. And I've put Master Yi in D tier. You saw his stats, guys. You saw his stats. Master Yi goes in D tier. We're back to crapping on Master Yi every single match. Do you know what's really interesting? I'm going to show you, right? I'm going to change the jungle. So you can see Master Yi, 43% win rate. Let's change it to gold. Right? Master Yi is the most played jungler in gold with a 54% win rate. You go to diamond and Master Yi is it is the perfect illustration about Master Yi problems. He craps on low elo people because they don't know how to deal with him. But high elo, he is like in the dumpster. He's so bad at high level play unless you've got a specific setup to work with Master Yi. The wild stats has absolutely perfected the Master Yi problem for me, and I love it. I love it. Right, jungle done. Also, Shyvana sucks. Mid lane. I think the recent changes to Youmuu's have massively affected Zed, even though I don't think he got a buff. I think the fact that his Youmuu's spike is just that little bit better now. Youmuu's first item spike, and it balances out when you get Edge of Night. So really, like, he gets a slightly better first item spike, but his overall impact hasn't changed. I think Zed was already on the borderline of S+ tier, so I think Zed's up there right now. Orianna and Galio. I actually think the Archangel's changes really do affect Ziggs. Even though I didn't always build Archangels on Ziggs, but I do think a lot of players do. And so therefore, I think those changes have impacted him. I think Katarina gets herself back up into S tier just with the damage buff to her ultimate. I think Twisted Fate's still good. I think Diana's still good. I think I've moved Jace down to A+ tier. Again, I do think that his early game, especially in the mid lane, is a bit more exploited. I think Fizz is actually better than I used to give him credit for. I think he's still a very, very good mid laner that can snowball pretty heavily. But he is quite hard to play. So you always have to be careful playing Fizz. Like, he can snowball really hard, but you have to be very good with Fizz and know your limits to really make use of it. Morgana carry, I think, got relatively hit. I mean, I was talking to Hell's Devil about this today. I don't think the nerfs to Morgana's ultimate damage are that ridiculous because it's a few percentage health points, which in the grand scheme of things, especially when you're dealing with the squishier members of the team, it's not going to make that much difference overall. Like, if you're talking the difference between like 3% max health versus not 3% max health, that's, yeah, for tanks, that might make a bit difference. You know, to put it in context, if a tank has 4,000 HP and you're missing 3% damage, that's like 120% damage, right? So, sorry, what's like 120 damage that you're missing because of the percentage. So, you know, I think it's not a huge deal, if I'm completely honest with you. Morgana wasn't... I mean, that percentage health-based damage is nice for her ultimate, but Soul Shackles is more about the control that it provides to team fights, but that's just my opinion. I've moved Aurelion Soul up. I think I was being too harsh on him, and actually looking at his stats, a lot of people still play him, and he still has a relatively good win rate. Kale in the dumpster. Zed, like Sett, Riven, and Pantheon, and even Renekton, if I'm honest with you, I consider these like counter picks. So like someone locks Yasuo, I might play Renekton or Sett. Someone locks Zed, I might play Sett or Renekton. Like they're really only good counter picks to like these AD assassin type picks, or even to like the Katarinas and the Dianas. But you know, outside of that their matchups aren't as good. So you know, these are like good counter picks in my opinion. That, you know, if you pick them, if you pick them without seeing the enemy mid laner, you're going to have a bad time, for the most part anyway. Right, let's talk about AD carries. Okay, so Varus and Kai'Sa haven't really been changed. I think those two are still the best AD carries in the meta right now. Vayne, the changes didn't mean that much for her. They weren't a huge deal. I still think she's a very, very solid AD carry. I think Xayah's great. I think Orianna, we see a lot of this in competitive, although I wouldn't really 100% recommend it in solo queue unless you're playing with a duo. But she is a really, really solid bot laner who I think obviously has a lot of scaling potential. And if you pair her up with a support, she's going to have a really safe early game. I got confused. I misread Draven's Whirling Death as his spinning axes. So I thought, oh my god, a 20% buff to his spinning axes? That's ridiculous. But no, it's just a 20% buff to his Whirling Death. It does, however, make his execute potential a little bit higher. But I still think he remains where he was previously. Ziggs and Brand I've included. Brand is another good AP carry option that I think a lot of pro players are considering right now. Caitlyn, I think she's decent. Ezreal, I think he's obviously good, but not insane. Jinx, again, got to be completely transparent. Jinx plus Lulu is a really good lane. Jinx by herself is a little lackluster. Ashe plus Lulu is really coming in as a really good pick. Corki I've moved down to A tier as well because he's not really getting played that much right now. And I think if you want an AP carry, people are actually opting for true AP carries rather than just Corki. Then there is the Tristana, who, to be honest with you, I was thinking about picking Tristana between these two, but I think every time I move Tristana lower than A tier, I get flamed. But I don't think she's super strong right now. Senna is an AD carry, not super hyped about her, especially given the soul changes. Akshan, and we put Teemo in the dumpster because if you play Teemo AD carry, you deserve to be reported. Okay, supports. Here's my thoughts. Thresh, Lulu, Nami, the best supports in the meta. Lulu pairs up with a load of good high tier supports right now. She gets banned pretty frequently. Nami, probably the best enchanter in the meta. And Thresh, I feel, very much an all-rounder with a very strong win rate. I think then beyond that, Alistar, Braum, and Morgana are really good options for the next tier. Then, the new addition, Yuumi. Yuumi is not good as a solo queue pick, in my opinion. You rely too heavily on your teammates as Yuumi, and your agency is not very good. However, I think Yuumi might start to creep up in the meta once people figure out things like Garen Yuumi and play that in solo queue or duo queue. I think she's obviously much better when you play with a good duo. She's great with Olaf. She's great with Garen. You know, even if they're just on your team, these are good picks for Yuumi. I think she'll start to gain a bit of power once people start figuring out the good combos with Yuumi, and also I think she's much better in duo and trio than she is in by herself. Move Janna down. She's kind of fallen out of favor a little bit. Leona and Rakan still in that same spot. They are good engaged supports, but kind of outclassed a little bit by Alistar and a little bit by Thresh right now. Although I do think maybe Leona's a little underrated, but Morgana has kind of brought a good counter pick in against Leona because the Black Shield kind of shuts down whatever Leona wants to do. Senna, she's decent. Sett, I've moved to A tier because he's a good choice, but not absolutely insane. I actually don't mind Blitzcrank. Sona, in my opinion, is the best of the remaining kind of like healing enchanters. Lux, Soraka, and Senna, what's the name? Seraphine, all in B tier. Why is Mundo here? Go and watch some North American wildrift esports. They made it look OP, but don't play it in solo queue. But I'm just saying, if you want to play Mundo support, it has worked and actually is pretty strong. I'm still not confident about Mumu. I really do think he could be a pick, but I'm too nervous to try it. It feels like a Mumu Misfortune, or just like an aggressive lane with a Mumu seems like a pretty solid choice. Malphite, I know people like to play Malphite support, but I don't rate it massively. I mean, it's good for its ultimate, but that's about it. And same thing with Annie. Like, Annie's only good for the ultimate, and you need Proto Belt to make Annie's ultimate actually useful. So there you go. You can't buy a support item. That is my tier list, guys. Thank you, Wild Stats, for sponsoring the video, and I will see you all very, very soon.